Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan. Read the episode's book first if you don't want any spoilers, because we're full of them.
We also talk about sensitive topics. This is a horror podcast after all, and we swear a lot. Well, Amber does. Find any trigger warnings in our episode notes. We're happy you're joining us, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the podcast. This episode, we're talking about We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. This was a suggestion by Amber, who has read several of his books now.
I've read most of his work, yeah. I really enjoy his writing, so I was excited to read this one. I hadn't read it yet, so it was new for me.
And you also like heavy metal, so that helps a lot.
Yes, it does.
Before we go into the book summary, let's talk a little bit about Grady Hendrix, who I think is a pretty popular horror author, it seems. His name pops up a lot. Mm-hmm. I hadn't read anything by him before. I had just seen his name on the books that you were reading, so I did a little digging into this guy, and he's really interesting. He is into storytelling, both on the book universe and in the film universe. He's born in South Carolina, but he lives in Manhattan. Before he turned to professional writing, he worked in the library for the American Society for Psychical Research, which is kind of crazy, I guess.
I don't know what that is.
So psychical research is the study of paranormal phenomena, which
that makes sense.
Is probably a good background to have if you want to write spooky stories.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to Florence Tanner of Hell House by Richard Matheson. I just read that. And
so then we can assume that Grady Hendrix actually believes in ghosts then?
I don't know if we can assume that.
Well,
he could just be interested in that and maybe just needed a job.
Or he's
I don't know.
Skeptical about existence of ghosts. I mean,
I don't know. I'm not sure. That would be cool to find out.
So he worked at the Library of Psychical Research.
Psychical Research doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
No, not really.
But then he turned to professional writing. And he's been writing for about 10 years, at least based on his publishing history, starting with his novel Horrorstör, which is really cool. Tell us about how that works out.
Well, Horrorstör, I thought was a really fun read. It's a take on IKEA, basically, and if an IKEA was haunted and there were weird stuff going on and people got stuck. It's kind of like a haunted house meets a ghost story, I guess.
And the book is kind of shaped like I don't know, something.
An IKEA catalog.
Yeah, an IKEA catalog, which is really cool, but also is frustrating for you. Based on your description of his books, they're all oddly shaped, which makes it hard to stack them neatly into a bookshelf.
Yes. I think maybe Final Girl Support Group, How to Sell a Haunted House, and We Sold Our Souls might be normal shape, but I know for a fact Horrorstör and My Best Friend's Exorcism are oddly shaped for me. They bother me because they don't properly fit in a bookshelf. An IKEA catalog is very square.
Yes.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, My Best Friend's Exorcism is really narrow. So they're like very opposite.
He's also wrote My Best Friend's Exorcism, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, Final Girl Support Group, which I think was the first book you read.
Yes.
How to Sell a Haunted House, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. And he's also written some short stories.
My Best Friend's Exorcism was made into a movie. I recommend reading the book. And then if you want to see the movie, wait, because he produced it, or he was one of the
executive producer.
Yeah, he was one of the producers, there were more than just him, but it was okay. It was good, but it lacked the, I don't know, character building, I guess, that the novel does, which, is typical with films. You don't really get the inside scoop of a character's mind and stuff. And it lost some of the humor, I feel, that the book had.
Yeah, it's interesting. So he was the executive producer for that. He is also the executive producer for Horrorstör, which is in development.
Mm-hmm.
He was also I believe a writer for a movie called Satanic Panic about a pizza delivery girl who delivers to a mansion full of Satanists who kidnap her and lock her in her room once they find out that she's a virgin so they can use her for their satanic ritual.
I have not seen this yet, but...
It sounds like a fun one.
It's on my TBW? To be
DVR.
watched? No, that's red.
Right. Well, it's a book podcast, so I'm thinking of words.
Yeah. TVW? Is that a thing?
Yeah, sure.
Did
it is now.
That? Okay.
A couple cool things about him. So for Final Girl Support Group, when he was touring around and promoting it, instead of just doing like a typical author events, which he found to be too boring, and I agree with, he did kind of a one-man show where he discussed the origins of our obsession with murder and entertainment, tracing it back to fan fiction for Jack the Ripper.
You know, he also did something similar with the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. He started a podcast talking about vampires.
Yeah, that's cool.
He did that for, I think, about a year, and he has posted since, but it's like once a year or something.
Yeah, we've been to a few author events, and they are interesting. It's more, I could see how it'd be really boring from the author's point of view, just because how many times do you want to answer the question, where do you get your inspiration from? Where do your ideas come from? And I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about a musician playing the same songs night after night, but they're like having a lot of fun doing that. Where I feel like saying,
well, you don't know that an author's not having fun because
yeah.
They might get weird, quirky questions, especially when you're looking at the horror genre as opposed to other genres. But anything done repetitively enough is going to get old.
True enough. So he has also written nonfiction, including Paperbacks from Hell, the twisted history of 70s and 80s horror fiction, which I believe you have.
I do, and I've started it, and again, it's an odd shape, which is frustrating.
It features info on obscure horror such as The Little People, a book about Nazi leprechauns who terrorize the inhabitants of an Irish castle.
Yeah, and that was actually the first book discussed in that book, and now it's on my list of like every time I go into a used bookshop, I'm going to look for this book now because it just sounds so ridiculous and so much fun.
It's probably in the back of one of those, what are those twirly things in school?
The pulp
stores?
Fiction.
Yeah, like the pulp section.
Yeah, that's what the book's about pretty much. It talks about how horror back in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, when it started to pick up, it was just pulp fiction that you'd get at like the grocery store. Really off the wall stuff, not at all regulated, not even called horror at that point. And then eventually it started to branch off into subgenres, and then you got science fiction separated from horror and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting read so far. I'm enjoying it.
You probably guess that he likes movies. He's been executive producer on some of them, but he's also just a huge movie buff. He's a founder of Subway Cinema, which then launched the New York Asian Film Festival, which is really cool, championing the works of Asian directors at a time when Asian film was struggling in New York. I saw an interview where it sounds like he's stepped away from that a bit just because Asian cinema is not difficult to find or see or stream anymore. Kind of feels like he got that first objective completed, including South Korean director Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
He seems very campy. He gives me a real Randy Meeks from Scream vibe based on the interview videos that I had seen. It just seems like he has a ton of knowledge about the horror genre and obviously kung fu movies too, and Asian horror, and probably more than those categories, but those are the ones that I know he's a big buff about and really likes to promote.
Something to aspire to.
So what about this book? What about We Sold Our Souls? Let's move on to that.
Okay, that sounds good. So We Sold Our Souls was published in 2018. Let's go into a semi-brief summary about the book, and then we'll talk about different aspects of it, what we liked and all that. Kris Pulaski is an aspiring heavy metal musician who ditches her acoustic guitar lessons with Mr. McNutt, love that name, and pockets the money to buy a beat-up electric guitar and amp. Through painstaking practice, she learns to jam out to Black Sabbath in her mom's freezing basement. She ends up starting a band with her neighbor, Terry Hunt, forming Dürt Würk, inspired by Kris's German grandpa, who worked the dirt as a gravedigger. They recruit Tuck Merriweather on bass guitar, Scotty Rocket on rhythm guitar, and JD on drums. They're actually not sure how JD got into the band, but he's a bit crazy, and they end up replacing him with Bill. In a career spanning over 1,000 live shows, Dürt Würk nearly makes their big break while on tour with Slayer. Unfortunately, their singer Terry is a huge dick, and he ends up talking shit to the Slayer guys, calling them sellouts. Dürt Würk is kicked off the tour, and 34 years later, Kris is working the night shift at a Best Western, dealing with a naked guest who pisses all over the lobby floor. She no longer plays music and lives paycheck to paycheck. Her old bandmates hate her because the night after they got kicked off the Slayer tour, she drove their van while totally smashed drunk, flipping the vehicle and paralyzing Bill in the process. And that was after she already pissed them all off by refusing to sign Terry's secret deal, scrapping Dürt Würk to form Coffin. Terry's play all along. Terry, also known as the Blind King, took everything from Kris. He took her music, ditched the band, and became rich and famous, burying Kris's pride and joy, the album Troglodyte. Now, Kris is dealing with the aftermath of her choices and is reminded of it all when she sees that Terry and Coffin are back on tour. Kris decides it's time to dig up her guitar and head over to Scotty's to talk to the one person who might not completely hate her. Then things start to get weird. Kris goes on the adventure of her lifetime through the hellscape of America and her life to stop Terry from getting away with his betrayal once and for all. She battles hopelessness and the very unlikely reality that she will be able to even see Terry, much less stop him. But with the power of metal, she's determined and confident that a girl with a guitar never has to apologize for anything.
Yeah, so that's the build-up to the book. And, I mean, already you can tell this is a music book, a music horror book, I should say.
Yes. And
we should mention that the Blind King, or Terry, his new band Coffin, wants to play new metal.
NU metal.
NU metal. Which they're not so happy about.
No, definitely not, especially Scotty.
What does Scotty say in response to Terry's insistence that they join his new Coffin band?
So Scotty, after hearing Terry talk about the type of music he wants to make, he snatches the pages out of Terry's hands and rips them in half, threw the pieces up in the air, gotten in Terry's face. Wah, 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 he shouted. No one loves me. Boo-hoo. Guess what? We play fucking metal. I don't want to sing about your sad feelings. I want dragons.
That's pretty metal.
Yeah.
So Kris is...
Some of the best metal songs are about dragons.
So Kris is working at the Best Western in the middle of the night with this dude pissing on the floor and all these weird things. Not a whole lot going on.
Exposing himself, the typical late night, creepy hotel, motel vibe.
She's inherited her mom's house. She lives alone. Her parents are both dead.
Well, she doesn't inherit it. Her brother does,
right.
And she's just living there.
That's true. So
it's even worse.
And it's kind of in a rundown place in rundown Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Nowheresville.
Yeah, so she's, just scraping by and eventually hears that Terry, as the Blind King, is on tour. She ends up seeing a billboard, or was that Melanie?
Nope, she sees a billboard and she's pissed.
Yeah, she sees a billboard, sees this guy who screwed them over and left them in the dirt.
Ruined her life.
So she needs to get the band back together, or at least start talking to the band. She first goes to meet up with Scotty Rocket, their other guitar player.
The rhythm guitar, yeah.
Yes. He also blasts out some cool solos. He's in a very bad state. When she gets there, his wife is hoping that Kris being there can shake him out of whatever funk he's in.
Even though she hates Kris, vehemently hates her.
Yeah, a lot of people hate Kris from the band and their significant others, and we don't really know at first why. So it's kind of a big step for her to go and approach her bandmates, because it's not going to be a friendly reunion. So she goes to Scotty Rocket's house. He's hanging out in his basement, surrounded by unsold Dürt Würk merch, totally ignoring his family and just tin hat, paranoid, conspiracy theory, says stuff's going on with the blind king, and there are these weird things that are happening outside of just the fact that Terry sold out and left them behind.
Yeah, he talks about having these tiny cameras all over his house that Kris can't even see. And she's like, come on, dude, you're crazy.
He talks about how Terry tried to bury Dürt Würk's album Troglodyte.
He didn't try. He successfully did.
Oh, yes.
It's gone.
That's
you
right.
can't find bootlegs. There's nothing.
So Terry has completely buried this album, essentially burying Kris's work. Black Iron Mountain, which is the middle of the earth, but in an evil, demonic sense.
Kind of like Mordor.
Yeah, Mordor. Is it in the middle of the earth, or am I just thinking of it as...
Yeah, it's a hole.
That's right.
In the middle of the earth. Very metal.
Yeah, very metal. Scotty tells Kris how Troglodyte has been completely buried by Terry. One of the major themes, or the major theme of Troglodyte, is the idea of Black Iron Mountain, which is just like the Mordor in the middle of the earth where demons and evil things spawn from, right? And apparently this album Troglodyte was the only way to keep Black Iron Mountain from destroying the world. So he tells her how Terry can see everything, and then he gets a phone call, and the ringtone is from a Coffin song, Stand Strong, which is weird.
It sounds very new metal.
Sounds very new metal. And he talks on the phone for a little bit. It's kind of weird. And then all of a sudden, he pulls a gun on her because he's been told, he says, to kill her. Instead, he kills himself, and Kris is in total shock. She doesn't believe his conspiracy theories until men dressed as UPS drivers come and kill Scotty's family. She flees to Tuck, the bassist, who betrays her to Bill, and she is institutionalized into his wealthy rehab center well in the woods.
And here's about where we find out that Bill was paralyzed in the accident. He lost the use of his legs. So he's in a wheelchair, but he's happy.
Yeah, I mean, she's real nervous about seeing him because of, she led to his paralyzed state, but it's almost as if everything's under it's water under the bridge, right?
Yeah. He's forgiven her, and then we realize, it's because he's got this rehab wellness center. And so the Well in the Woods was a rundown house that was in the woods in Kentucky that the band went to as like a stopping point in between shows. And eventually it became like their hub. And this is where they wrote Troglodyte, in this basement, and where the night of the signing took place. And so from here, we know that this is kind of the center of the band's, this is the core of where the band comes from, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's where Troglodyte was written. That's where the contract was signed. So yeah, this is a major location for this band's history. And it was a total shithole when they were there. But now that Bill's running Well in the Woods, it's pristine and
all glass and
polished wood and things like that.
Yeah. And so it got rich people wandering around in like white robes, like over-medicated to get them not addicted to drugs by giving them drugs, typical wellness center horror vibes. Exactly what you would think it would be.
Especially when Kris wakes up and finds herself strapped down to a bed. Or is it like a gurney?
It's like a board.
Yeah.
And they tell her, okay, you're crazy. Now you live here and you're going to be medicated and we're going to fix you.
That doesn't work out so well, really, for anybody.
No.
But eventually she escapes and she finds JD, their original crazy drummer who didn't last very long. And he helps her get closer to Terry. JD is also full of conspiracy theories that generally come true and is killed while saving Kris from a mob. This scene was crazy.
I loved it. So good.
They stop at I think it's just a rest stop, right? And some people start to recognize her because at this point, Terry is is directly talking about her on the radio, along with his
convincing people that she's crazy and out to get him and wants to hurt him, and she's mentally unstable. She escaped from this wellness center and she's dangerous.
And Terry also has a partner, you might say, named Rob Anthony. And this guy, he was their manager. Yeah, he was their manager. And he brought the contract to Terry initially. This guy's a bad guy. And he's also on the airwaves talking about Kris and how dangerous she is and look out for her. So the public is aware that she is a potential threat. So they stop at this rest stop and all these people start noticing her because they're on their way to Hellstock. So all these fans are around.
And people just start to show up. Like when they first get there, there's no one really there. There's like 2 people. And then by the time Kris realizes that people are starting to recognize her, like people just start appearing. It's uncanny. Like, where are they coming from? Why are they suddenly all here?
Yeah, and they just kind of push into her and JD, just overwhelming them. They have to
almost like a mosh pit.
Almost like a mosh pit. And this part really made me think about how there's this concept in the book of the 100-handed eye, and this is a description of Black Iron Mountain and Terry Hunt and how they have eyes and ears everywhere. And I feel like that was definitely inspired by the 100-handers of Greek myth, who famously had 100 hands and 50 heads, which doesn't really apply here, but the 100 hands definitely applies because this scene, you could just see everyone holding their phone out, pushing it into her face to get the recording and shame her and push into her and live stream at her. And that was really cool. But anyway, they escape from the mob. Well, Kris escapes from the mob. She finally makes it to Vegas and she's able to reach Terry. She forces her way on stage and plays the Troglodyte album. Terry can only go along with her in fear of the large crowd turning into a mob. As the album comes to a conclusion, Kris is swept up by the crowd, never to be seen again. So that's the general recap of the book. Let's dig into some Black Iron Mountain.
Yeah. I feel like it's the center of the story. It's what makes everything make sense.
Yeah, I like how Black Iron Mountain is the ultimate antagonist. While Terry offers an antagonist in a person, Black Iron Mountain is definitely, the ultimate evil here.
Yeah.
And one of the coolest things that happens is Kris finds out that Troglodyte, which she had written, 34 years ago or whatever, actually is a bit of a prophecy, almost a roadmap to overcoming Black Iron Mountain, which is why Terry had wanted to bury it so deeply.
Yeah, and when she's in Well of the Woods, she uses Troglodyte as her means to survive the brainwashing and her being doped up by the staff there. And she just sits and smiles and doesn't respond to any stimulant. They burn her leather jacket, which was called her Bones, and it fit her as if it was an extra skin. They burn it in front of her and she just sits there and smiles because the whole time she's playing the album song by song in her head, and it's giving her the strength to survive this trial, but also the steps in which she can take to get to the next part of the story.
My favorite example of this is the song Down Where the Worms Squirm.
Yes, so good.
She's going through this song in her head while escaping well in the woods. And how she does this is by actually climbing down to the bottom of a well while trying to escape people finding her. She gets to the very bottom, but then her pursuers start to open the lid of the well, which she had closed behind her, and there's nowhere for her to hide except for 2 pipes on either side of the bottom of the well. She ends up squeezing herself into one of those pipes so that they won't see her when they look down. And this was probably, for me, the most horrific part of the book. It is all claustrophobia.
Yeah, I really felt that in this part.
Yeah, she has to put her arms in front of her to make herself thin out and feels like she's being crushed on all sides from the pipe. She gets to a point where there's a 90-degree turn.
And she moves forward by like inching with her toes.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
So if she, I don't know, encountered a block, it would be hard, if not impossible, to scoot back.
Yeah.
It's just terrifying stuff. And she ends up getting through the pipe and you think, oh, phew. But she goes into a cave, which then, while it's open at first, quickly becomes small again. And she has to crawl through that, and she's getting her back shredded and isn't sure she can get through. And it's, very, I felt like I was suffocating in there with her.
Yes.
Thankfully, not really.
Yeah. And even though we knew she was going to get out, there was no way. I mean, this was about halfway through the book. There's no way she was not going to make it out. It was still really cringe.
So at this point, as she's escaping, we should also mention that she knows now what happened on contract night. It's not just that she said, I don't want to be in a new metal band, and then got drunk and flipped the van. She discovers that there's about 4 or 5 hours or so of missing time on that night when she goes back and tries to rearrange the events. Because what really happened, after they had signed the contract, they got drunk and partied and passed out. And then these, I don't know, creatures, phantoms, demons, whatever you want to call them, come out and begin to suck their souls from their bodies.
Yeah, and their soul comes out as like a black foam out of their mouth.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, and these demons, I guess, are pulling that out of them. And Kris walks in on her other bandmates, sans Terry, being assaulted by these demons, and realizes, we got to get the hell out of here. And so she, yes, is drunk, but grabs them, wakes them up, gets them out of the house, gets them in the van. And what she originally thought was that she was avoiding another oncoming car, twisted, and they rolled off. What in reality happened was she was driving, and one of the demons got on top of the van and was climbing onto the windshield, and Tuck is like, what the fuck is that thing? And so she is swerving to try to knock it off the van and swerves too hard. The car flips. They all get messed up. They just hear Bill screaming in the back of the truck and pass out. And then hours later, the EMTs get there. So clearly what actually happened was the demons got into the truck and sucked out their souls and messed with their memories. I don't know.
Well, they sucked out their souls in the basement, right?
But I think it's a continuous thing. They maybe keep doing it. And then I think somehow they either manipulated their memories or wiped their memories, something along those lines.
And what's so fascinating at the end of the book is that a big reason, or if not the reason, that Terry is putting on Hellstock. I think for the second time, he keeps adding shows, just like...
Well, he did his end tour, which was in Vegas, LA, and San Francisco. And then he says, okay, I'm going to do this final thing, which was like a 2 or 3 day event. It's supposed to be the new Woodstock meets Burning Man. And so it's just in the middle of the desert, and a huge lineup of a bunch of famous bands. And then he's playing the ultimate headlining show, and then he's done.
And at Hellstock, they have all these stands with, different causes or different things you can sign up for, whether it's
credit cards.
Yeah, credit cards for the army, for different charities. So people are signing away not what they think they're signing away in those contracts, which are actually contracts to sell their souls.
Yeah, it's kind of like whenever you get an update on your phone and they're like, here are all the terms. You don't read them. No one reads them. Maybe 1 in 100 people read it. And I think that's what Hendrix is getting at. We're constantly saying, yeah, okay, sure. I accept the cookies. I'll accept the terms for the update without really knowing what you're signing away. And he's saying, in a sense, we're signing away our souls. And I just love that.
Yeah, I think about that in video games that do that make you sign like the contract before you can play, and then just like jam down as fast as I can because I want to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I already bought it. I want to play it. Like, what else are you going to make me do? Come on, guys.
So part of the conspiracy too, did we talk about UPS with Scotty?
We mentioned that they killed his entire family.
That's true.
But that's it.
Yeah, so I mean, this isn't the real UPS, don't worry. These are guys.
But is it?
Or
they don't explain that.
I guess they don't.
Because that's, I think that the UPS portion of it is the idea of Amazon's taking over the world with delivering whatever you want as quickly as you want.
Including death.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a really crazy scene, probably my second favorite scene after Down Where the Worms Squirm, where she's at Hellstock. She's been abandoned, and these UPS drivers come to her door in this dingy motel. And
well, she's not at Hellstock yet. She's in Vegas.
Right, but she's on her way. But her ride ditches her, and we'll talk about her later. And the UPS guys show up and basically just pin her to the bed and start saying, what is it? Here's a package. That's not it. There's something about like, here's a package and then sign here.
Accept the delivery or something.
I think it's like accept the delivery, which means take this pill. And they just start filling her up with pills with the idea that they're going to make it look like it's just another sad rock star suicide in an old dingy motel. And they hold her jaw in a way where she can't spit it out. She's kind of forced to consume these pills. And they start to get a cord together and wrap it in around the shower bar and create a noose so that she'll overdose and hang herself. Who would think second about old washed up rock star doing that, right?
Yeah, they say package over and over again as they try to give her the pills, and then they say sign here when she's supposed to swallow them.
Yeah, it's creepy, and they come in and they all kind of look alike, which I don't know if that's just supposed to be like
the UPS uniform.
Yeah, but they all have like thin mustaches and similar builds, I believe. I don't think she's saying that they all look identical to each other, but they look very similar. And I'm curious if they're just similar because they're of a type, or if there's something going on there, like maybe they're not human and somehow involved with the special ones. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're the UPS clones, part of the conspiracy.
So how does Kris get to the concert anyway if everybody knows that she's a threat to Terry?
When she's driving with JD, he keeps listening to the talk radio and just the awfulness that radio has become with the weird, goofy sounds and people just talking in the same 24-hour news cycle, just repeating. And he says that that's how they can use that information to find the holes to get through to Vegas, because every highway they try to take, every road, there's construction or there's an accident. It's just the universe is preventing them from getting to Vegas. So JD is able to help her get a decent amount of the way, but she's just unable to, they can't break through this invisible barrier. But a different character who we have neglected to talk about so far is Melanie, who is a young girl living in a different nowhere's land USA town. She also is in a dead-end job. She's miserable. She went to university, got a degree, but is in so much debt. She's stuck in this cycle of American crap. And she says, fuck it, I'm going to this concert. Packs up. She works her ass off. She makes just enough money to make her way out west, and she just leaves everything behind. And she stumbles upon Kris, who's at a convenience store or a gas station. She looks like shit. It looks like her boyfriend just beat her up. And Melanie's like, damn, I'm going to help this girl. I'm just going to I got to do the right thing. She gets Kris in the car. They start driving, and both of them are like, oh man, this was a bad idea. Melanie's like, this girl's fucked up. But she doesn't realize that it's Kris.
Yeah. And also, Melanie's obviously a huge Coffin fan, which
she's on the way to the show.
Yeah.
It was life-changing for her, and Kris is talking shit, and Melanie's like, wow, you're an ass, and you're just messed up, so I'm going to ditch you. But then they make up because they both like Dolly Parton, and who doesn't like Dolly Parton? So, of course, Dolly Parton brings them together, and Melanie's is just, I think, the sign of innocence. She's unaware of the conspiracy. She's like the only person in the world who doesn't know who Kris is and is willing to help, and just thinks that people need to stop being mean to each other. She's the key that gets Kris to Vegas.
Another reason that Melanie came out was she has a friend, Hunter, who we don't really meet, just a contact who has tickets for Coffin, and seems like
they met on Tinder or something, even though they're on opposite sides of the country.
And they kind of have a sort of flirty relationship, but they hadn't met each other yet. And he says, I've got tickets for you. And at first, Melanie tries to convince her boyfriend to move out with her, but he's too busy smoking pot and playing video games and getting FML tattooed on the back of his neck. And when they try to save up money to move out, she soon finds out that while he says he was saving money, he was actually blowing it, and they're further in debt. So she's like, screw this guy, leaves to go meet up with her friend. And that's how she's able to get the tickets to the show.
Yes. And once they get to Vegas, she realizes this is kind of uncomfortable as a woman to meet up with a strange man. And she asks Kris to go along because she's worried that, it's a woman alone. Yeah, guys are scary.
And it's not just him, too. It's like a group of his bro friends.
Yeah, he's got there. I think there are like 4 of them. So she's uncomfortable, and she asks Kris to go meet them, and Kris agrees. Melanie convinces Kris to go to the show with them because she has the extra ticket that was supposed to be her boyfriend's. And Kris finally says, all right, I'll go. I'm going to go upstairs, take a shower. And the guys are like, that's Kris Pulaski. That's who Terry's looking for. So they convince her to call it in to whatever hotline, I think. And that's when the UPS drivers come to the room and mess with her.
Yeah, after Melanie ditched Kris. And part of that was, it's interesting talking about her, how she's kind of young and naive, right? Because she says that the boys she was with convinced her to leave Kris behind, all kind of working together to be like, oh, she's kind of suspect. There's a lot going on with her. She's trying to destroy Terry. So they really peer pressure her into leaving Kris behind, even though she feels bad about it.
And they just make her generally feel uncomfortable the entire time she's with them. She feels like she's at the butt of a joke or not in on something. She feels like they're whispering about her. And I got the vibe of okay, they're either going to do something to her, like a group of guys and a girl. Ooh, that can be scary. That was my impression. Just boys will be boys.
Yeah. I mean, Hendrix also doesn't make any bones about that there's something ill-conceived going on. I mean, one of their names is Sloan, and the other one is Chisholm, which Hendrix lets us know rhymes with Jism without saying Jism, but he's, definitely creating a character type here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Melanie ends up going to the show without Kris because the guys convince her Kris is bad news. Let's just go. And she does. And Kris ends up getting to the show because right before the UPS drivers are going to kill her, hang her in the bathroom, they get a call that Terry wants to talk to her. And so they end up bringing her to like the backstage area.
Yeah, her last ditch effort before they kill her, she just starts saying, I wrote a second album.
Yeah.
Which she has not, but she's trying to get Terry's attention because Mr. 100-eyed man is listening and hearing everything, and it works.
Yep, it does. And that's how she's able to finally make it. They're in the desert. It's a pit of humanity. Half the workers left. So there's just like toilet pits and there's no clean water. It's just this nasty place.
Yeah, all the porta potties have been knocked over and people are setting some booths on fire. And interestingly, when I was curious to see what the world of Reddit thought about this book, there were a couple people who said they had been to Woodstock 2019, I think. And they were like, this could have been a description of that concert. I guess it was just a complete disaster.
Yeah.
So Melanie gets invited backstage and her friends to go to the Coffin tour bus and meet Terry in person. And of course they go into the tour bus and it's like nice AC and it's a museum of artifacts of Coffin's career, including a really weird detail. There's I believe a microphone that was gifted to him for putting on a concert for Osama bin Laden's son.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
So, yeah. Yeah, definitely out there. He also actually took one of the bars that they played in and turned it into a trailer and like hangs out at this bar.
Yeah, this is the bar that I think they would go to growing up in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
It was a local bar that had shut down, and the reason it shut down is because he stole the bar and put it in his trailer.
It's so weird.
It reminds me
Living
of
on nostalgia.
I went to the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, and there was a stage that they had airlifted in, although ideally with permission, but it was, I don't know which punk band it was, but it was the stage that they had played on locally, but they like got a helicopter to airlift it down into the museum, which is just crazy.
Especially for punk.
Right.
The corporatization of punk. Okay. Here we go. Now we're getting down and dirty.
Nothing's safe.
Nothing is safe. Well, except metal.
I mean,
not new
is it really?
Metal. Real metal. That's the whole point. Troglodyte is real metal. I'm going off on a tangent now, but I really see that with music. I totally believe in what Hendrix is trying to point out about the music industry, and everything is so, as Hendrix puts it, market research lyrics, lab tested signature changes. It's so controlled, especially I find pop music. It feels like some of the songs are singing about the weirdest shit. Like it's like, oh, I went to the bar and got drunk and it was sad. And you're like, but it's like to pop music. And you're like, wait, this makes you want to dance, but it's like really depressing. Like it's weird, but it has that piece to it that is like market tested. And it's like, okay, it's catchy and it gets stuck in your head. And no matter how bad it is, it's still, people still listen to it. Like you've been in the room with me when I repeat lyrics in a pop song and I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, what the hell's going on? And so the corporatization of music is like a legitimate thing. And I feel like nu metal fell into that grossness.
Yeah. Nu metal and pop punk are probably related.
They are definitely related. Like nu metal is basically pop metal.
I don't know if this happens with metal as much, but when I tell people that I like punk, if they don't go like, oh, the Ramones, as if like it stopped evolving, they'll say, oh, so you like Green Day and Blink-182, and it just like tears my heart out, even though I play Enthused every week.
Yeah, it's like you either like Black Sabbath and like Iron Maiden, like the classics, right? Or like Kiss, hair metal.
Or Metallica.
Or, well, that's also hair metal.
I guess,
or
yeah.
It's like the shit you hear on the radio. Like, okay, I love System of a Down, but like that more,
highly produced.
Modern, highly produced. Korn, Slipknot, like, I don't know if Limp Bizkit's considered metal or like some weird bridge, but, like the new metal age tried to take metal and put it in this weird place that punk did go there. Some metal has gone there, but for the most part, no. I mean, I found the actual band Troglodyte on accident, and
oh, that's right. It sounded like it could be Troglodyte.
It's so good. It's like growly doom metal, and they're singing about killing Bigfoot. Like, how not corporate is that? Like what? And it's good. I really enjoyed the album. So it's hard. I think part of the point is it's hard to take music that has a soul and ruin it. But I think you can still try.
And it's also showing two different faces of aspiration, I guess, right? Terry Hunt wants fame. He wants people to love him. He wants to be everywhere. Where
he wants to be a rock star. That is his goal.
Right. Where Kris comes from the point of view, more of an artist who is writing because they have to help get through, difficult times. Writing as a release and as someone who wants to make really good music. And of course, she wanted to get big too. Who doesn't? But that's not the main driving force. She's not sacrificing creativity or integrity in that pursuit.
Well, it seemed like Kris wanted it to happen naturally, right? Like, they were writing their music, they ended up on tour with Slayer, and instead of micromanaging their image, like, Terry ended up sabotaging Dürt Würk in order to take that music and create a new image. It's like Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson is an image. You look at him, you're like, oh, that's Marilyn Manson. Like, you don't even have to listen to his music. Like, it's so iconic. It's creating this fame as opposed to it happening naturally where your music's just fucking good and people really like it and you're getting famous because your music is awesome, which was Kris's avenue.
Right. The way that she finds out about Terry even being on tour, and the same with Melanie, is they see huge billboards, like many of them one after the other or
Stylized.
Interspersed with other billboards, right? So huge marketing campaign, all blasting on the airwaves, just shoving it down your throat. But what's really interesting is how Melanie still really likes it. I mean, obviously they sell out Hellstock, right? But it's not so much because Terry is talented. It's because he's in with the special ones, these demons or whatever they are, who need to feed on souls. So they're really...
And also he just has enough money to get a really good lineup of musicians.
Right. A funny part of the book here is Slayer, I think, is the last band to play before they do. And in the beginning, as we mentioned before, Dürt Würk gets kicked off the Slayer tour because Terry's being an ass and calling them sellouts. But then at Hellstock, I don't know the singer of Slayer, sorry guys, but he's like, Terry had to get off the tour because he was too hardcore for us. So like trying to build him up as like a really cool tough guy. He didn't leave because he was being annoying. It's because he's the blind king.
It's Tom Araya.
Yeah. As you can tell, I'm not a metalhead.
And what's really funny is the guitarist of Slayer is Kerry King.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So it's kind of a play on...
I wonder if he's a jerk. Sorry, Terry. Maybe you aren't. But
Kerry.
Sorry, Kerry. Terry is definitely a jerk.
But it's also Tom and Kerry. So it's like he took the T from Tom and the Airy and made Terry. So maybe he's just a really big Slayer fan.
He's either a really big Slayer fan or he really doesn't like Slayer.
I mean, how can you not like Slayer? If you like metal...
I mean, this book is heavily inspired by...
I'm generalizing, I suppose, by saying...
We should mention, too, like the chapter titles of this book.
All either songs or albums of different metal bands. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I got very excited.
No, that's all right.
I actually wrote out a list of all of the bands that are mentioned positively in this book. Would you like to hear this list?
I do. I hope Dead Kennedys is on there.
So I'm going to start with the bands that are mentioned in the chapter titles. So they're not actually mentioned in the chapter titles, but they are either songs or albums written by those bands. So for instance, True as Steel is the first chapter, and that is a song by the band Warlock. So these are all the bands that are pulled for the chapter titles: Warlock, Venom, Iron Maiden, Twisted Sister, Guns N' Roses, Kiss, Fate's Warning, Dio, Napalm Death, Megadeth, Def Leppard, Manowar, Meshuggah, Sleep, Merciful Fate, Amon Amarth, Blind Guardian, Metallica, Unleashed, Dolly Parton, System of a Down, Emperor, Ozzy Osbourne, Zeal and Ardor, a Troglodyte song, which is how I ended up finding Troglodyte as an actual band, and AC/DC. And then other bands that are just mentioned within the book are Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Europe, Slayer, NWA, The Runaways, Bathory, Mastodon, Tool, Dead Kennedys, Avenged Sevenfold, Slipknot, Trivium, Camelot, Cannibal Corpse, Pallbearer, Purple Hill Witch, Earthless, Wolves in the Throne Room, Molotov, and Judas Priest.
Don't forget Dolly Parton.
I said Dolly Parton.
Oh, did you? In this
did.
list?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
Actually, well, no, in the first list. Yeah. Phew, that's a lot of music.
Yeah.
And most of it's really good.
Yeah, and I didn't feel while reading it that he was name dropping bands just to get bands in the metal themed book. It felt very natural.
A lot of these aren't named. It's just their song or albums. And the ones that are it's more few and far between, or in a group talking about the lineup at Hellfest, and then it names the 4 or 5 bands, which is Trivium, Camelot, Cannibal Corpse and stuff. So, but it was fun. It was oh, I know that band, or oh, there's another band, or oh, I like that one, or oh, that one's, yeah. And then they do actually name some new metal bands. I think I did put some of them. I think Slipknot was one of them, but I didn't put all those in there.
Yeah. Yeah, this was fun. It actually got me to start playing Iron Man on my guitar, which is really cool because the way they get that wow in the very beginning is by pulling the string above the nut on the guitar, which is the top of the fretboard right before the headstock with the tuning pegs, if that means anything to you. But so you don't actually play that note on any of the frets, you play outside of kind of the normal fret area. It's a really cool little detail that gives you a cool sound that something that I would never have tried without reading that's how they did it.
That's cool. I like that. I do not play guitar, so that was gibberish to me, but I'm sure it's really interesting.
It's cool. It's a bit easier to show with a visual, but oh well. Some of you will understand that. And I also, after reading this book, I was thankful for Kris because I kind of got in a guitar slump for a little bit, partly because it's winter and normally I would get up in the morning and play for an hour before we have to get our son ready for school. But it's just been cold and dark and hard to get up. So I wasn't playing much electric guitar. And then reading this book really got me back into practicing again. So thank you, Kris. I guess thank you, Hendrix.
Can I read this bit about new metal? I can't get over it. I just love how we talk shit about new metal. So Terry says, "We thought we were better than our audience. That's not going to happen this time. Coffins, new metal." The loudest sound in the room was a candle flickering in the cold draft that whined beneath a window. New metal was metal light, the flavor of moment that was ushering hardcore acts to mainstream success at the cost of their dignity. Bands that had been growling were suddenly rapping. Bass lines that had previously blasted now bounced with "Get on the dance floor funk." It was all about branding, fan outreach, accessibility, spray-on attitude, moving crowds of white kids smoothly from the pit to your merch booth where they'd buy $20 Limp Bizkit beer cozies and $30 corn bandanas. New metal isn't about anything, Kris said. New metal kids are cul-de-sac crybabies with their baseball hats on backwards. Every song is a little boy crying in his bedroom about how his girlfriend won't make him a sandwich like his mommy used to do. I love it. It's so good.
It is interesting. Sorry to bring it back to punk rock, but it is related, I promise.
No, it's fine.
When I went to the Punk Rock Museum with my friend, we got a tour in a group led by Jason Navarro of the Suicide Machines, which was so cool. But part of the museum is a poster and some artifacts of Good Charlotte. And he's kind of talking about all the different bands, and it's cool because a lot of them he can talk about personally playing with, right? So he gets to Good Charlotte and he points at it and he's just like, I don't actually know why they're here. but then he went on to say that while they weren't really punk, and what's funny is I don't know if you know their look, but they have kind of like dark black eyeliner and leather jackets. And he said when he had first seen them before hearing them, he's like, wow, these guys are going to be hard. And then they start playing Good Charlotte songs. But at the same time, it does bring some of that audience into better music, right?
So their genres, according to Wikipedia, is pop punk, alternative rock, punk rock, emo, and pop rock. Just in case you were wondering.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to dig on them. I don't know that much about them
anymore.
But I don't know. It's not punk.
And some people like it, and that's their thing. But I think the point of this book is to point out how music can be commandeered and how it ruins it.
Yeah, and I feel like even though metal and punk are so different, a big theme with Kris and her interpretation of metal is definitely like, this is music to fight back against the forces that oppress us, right? Really, in metal, it's more presented in a mythological form with Troglodyte, or in punk, they'll just straight up say, fuck the system or whatever. But they do have that, it feels like, I don't know if I want to say the true musicians, but some of the more serious musicians really take that tradition seriously, that it is music to set yourself free, not to just commodify.
My first thought is Bad Religion.
Yeah? Wait, in what way?
I feel like they've been making music for for 40 years. And I still don't feel like they're sellouts.
Yeah, they still sound great.
I mean, but no, not even sounding good or not, but like they're still singing about the same stuff. Like, fuck corporate America, like fuck Trump, fuck all the shit that we deal with. And it hasn't changed.
But in like the only Greg's very academic way of speaking.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the only thing that's really changed is like they've aged. But like they haven't slowed down. I mean, I don't want to compare them to other bands, but there's one in particular that is very punk, but still very corporate.
Who's that?
No effects.
Oh, no effects. Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah.
They're 3-year end of tour.
Yeah. I mean, I really like No Effects, and I'm so thankful for Fat Mike to bring us to Punk Rock Museum. Yeah, he is absolutely a salesman.
I mean, yeah, exactly. The Punk Rock Museum, that show that we watched, it was really entertaining, but you could tell like it was highly produced. Like,
oh yeah,
he controls everything.
Yeah,
but it's still fun music. And he makes, what is it, Bungo the Clown?
Koki the Clown. That shit's depressing. He's interesting. Not to side rail too much, but I feel like
we can talk about music.
I feel like he
about music
is 100% a real punk and plays punk rock, but he's also a showman and a businessman.
But I feel like that's also part of his thing. He's just like, fuck you, I'm gonna make money off of you. Like, that's also like incredibly punk.
Yeah.
There's like this weird line with punk where it's like, fuck you and fuck your money, but then there's the other side of the same coin that's like, fuck you, I'm gonna take your money.
Yeah.
I love it.
You'd think metalheads and punks would, I don't know, I guess they do. There is some cross-sectioning.
Well, we're married.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'll say that. That's a pretty good. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think.
It's a vibe. The vibe is different.
Yes. And punk sings about like anti-corporate shit, at least some. And metal sings about dragons and like Lord of the Rings and shit.
And metal's very technical, where being a good musician is an asset, where I hate the generalization that punk is like totally amateur, but that's a big appeal to it.
Well, if you play fast, you don't have to play good.
Yeah.
But that's fun.
Not to say there aren't some great punk musicians, but generally part of the appeal to it.
The guitarist of Rancid is like, or not the guitarist, sorry, the bassist.
Oh, Matt Freeman.
Yeah, Matt Freeman.
Guys,
he's really good.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, it'd be cool if he played metal.
Interesting fact about Rancid is supposedly Madonna sent them a naked picture of herself in the mail because there were big companies trying to like bid to purchase them, which they said no to. They were offered like millions of dollars and they said no because it was something like they would have to sign a 7-record deal that would turn them into Terry Hunt.
Well, Green Day. That's what Green Day did, right?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I think Green Day got like poo-pooed for a long time because they went big. They signed the contract. And,
that's right. They couldn't go play at the Gilman anymore because you had to be independent.
Yeah, and didn't Rancid make their own label? That was Rancid, right?
No, that was Brett Goretz, the guitarist of Bad Religion.
Okay.
Who ended up getting, supposedly, I just read this, a Rancid tattoo after they decided to stay with Epitaph and remain independent.
He's like, dude, come on, guys. I'll get a tattoo.
Anything.
It won't be FML on my neck, but I'll do it.
So let's go back to the book, talk about some impressions, what we liked, what we didn't like, Do you want to start with what you liked or whatever you want?
So this isn't directly related to anything in the book, but when I first started reading this and noticing that band songs and names were being dropped, I was like, okay, right away we hear Iron Man by Black Sabbath, and I'm like, okay, I kind of want to listen to it while I'm reading. So I went on Spotify and I found someone had made a playlist of all the songs mentioned in the book, and I started listening to it, and then right away they started talking about the Dead Kennedys, and I noticed the Dead Kennedys weren't in it. So I took this person's playlist, I copied it, and then I added and changed stuff. They had some incorrect songs in there, but I ended up listening to this Spotify playlist pretty frequently while I was reading, and at one point I was listening to it, and then they mentioned the song that I was listening to.
That's really cool.
I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. And like the part with Dolly Parton, they go through a list of her songs, and, I was kind of listening to them as it went. And it was just something I'd never done before. I've listened to music while reading, but not in such an active way where it felt like it was part of my reading experience. It's usually just background noise. So to block out other stuff or my mind, keeping my mind from wandering kind of thing. And that was really a cool experience. I want to do that more, but I don't know how, because most books aren't talking that I read are talking about death metal like this. So that was a really awesome aspect I found.
We might have the opportunity again. One of the books, after reading this book, I was like, okay, there's got to be some punk rock horror, right? I couldn't find a whole lot until I came across this book we might do an episode on called Punk Rock Ghost Story, which is supposedly really good, has good ratings. That's all I know. I don't really know anything about the author.
If we're going to read a metal book, we have to read a punk book.
Gotta balance it out.
It's only fair.
But that would be fun. If I assume there'll be some bands name dropped in that, make a playlist and see how that works.
I have a feeling I won't appreciate it quite as much, but it's only because I'm the metalhead and you're the punk.
I was actually listening to songs to Fan the Flames of Discontent by Refused at the end of this book, which is not metal, but it is pretty heavy and it worked really well. I actually read the end where she goes to the concert twice. And the first time I listened to the album CYRM by Oxen, which is a really cool Irish band we saw, which is like just, I don't know, moody, electronic, folksy. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Irish folk, not American folk.
Yeah, but it kind of has kind of like a dark, brooding feel to it that worked really well. And then listening to Refused, which was a lot heavier. Not that I didn't want to listen to the metal playlist, but since I didn't know those songs, it would be harder for me to read. If I do listen to music when I'm reading it, either has to have no lyrics or be something that I know so well that I can let it be in the background.
Or it can be doom metal, because most of the time it's really hard to understand what they're saying. So you're like,
oh, I should have done that.
There. Yeah. It made me think of when we saw Iron Maiden at the Ozfest.
That was a good show.
I don't know why that one specifically. I mean, I've been to a lot of shows, but that specifically stood out. You know, I'm like imagining them waving the British flag and people are freaking out and talking
similar
shit about Ozzy.
Yeah, they got kicked off the tour. Just like Dürt Würk.
Yeah, for talking shit. But for the opposite well, I guess it was the same reason.
No, this was because
they were calling him a sellout.
Yeah, I think this was when they were doing the Osbournes reality show.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's why they were like, screw this guy. And then this guy happened to be like...
We're real British metal. Oh, that was a really bad British accent. Wow. Oh, man. Whew. Okay. Moving on.
I would say my impressions, Kris is an awesome character. I mean, she's the main character, so you would hope so, but she's so cool. And I really like how much of the Troglodyte album we got exposed to. There's a lot of lyrics, how we talked about when she discovers that the album is almost the key to her escape while she's squirming through, you know, the pipes in the well in the cave. She's going through the lyrics of that song. And so you get a lot of the lyrics. They're super cool, super metal. I love that idea of her having written something that would then in the future save her life.
And the part where JD is so brutally murdered on the road is during the song Sailing the Seas of Blood.
Yeah. He gets, like, when all those fans are pushing in on them, they start driving away, and he doesn't want to drive through the crowd, but it's the only way to get through. So they climb in all over the car and into the car and basically rip him apart.
They grab his face through the window. They break his window, grab him in the mouth and rip half his face off, and like his eyeball falls out.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's so gory. I love it.
The only thing I didn't like, this is such a small part of the book, but it definitely bothers me the most, is at the end in the denouement, they talk about how, because JD was living in the basement playing drums in his mom's house, and it's kind of like, oh, what's going to happen to his mom now that JD is dead? And he has this weird part where it's like once a week his mom would wake up and hear the ghost of JD playing drums in the basement to know that her son was okay.
Well,
and
it's maybe part of the mythology,
but it makes no sense it related to the mythology. My question is if it has anything to do with a story in a metal song, because he was very much like a Valhalla Viking metal guy, so that seems like something
he's
that
in Valhalla.
Yeah. It just seemed, it felt
Taking
to me
care
like
of mom through music.
It felt very, I don't know, contemporary fiction to me. Like, we can't just have a character be brutally killed and then not have some like sweet rebound that makes you feel good about yourself. So that was a little cheesy to me. And some of Melanie's friends, like being named Sloan, and her boyfriend getting FML tattooed on the back of his neck. That stuff's pretty funny, but just for me personally as a reader, it felt a little too wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
I don't know. I know people like that. Yeah. I grew up listening to metal, and like I started listening to metal when new metal was in, and I definitely could picture those people vividly, and could name some people that
I got names to drop.
I'm not going to.
So check the show notes for these people.
Yeah, I'll link their Facebook profiles or MySpace.
MySpace.
No, but I get that, but I also, there are actually people like that.
Yeah.
And there are bro metalheads that are super cringe and make you really uncomfortable as a woman around them.
Make me feel uncomfortable as a small man.
Right, but I'm saying like in Melanie's case, like yeah. One thing with Melanie though, what I really liked was how she brought the book full circle and like continued the tradition of metal music, because in the very beginning of the book, Kris gets her shitty guitar and starts trying to learn Black Sabbath's Iron Man. And then at the very end, Melanie is in Los Angeles sitting with a guitar, starting to learn Beneath the Wheel, the first song on the Troglodyte album.
Yeah, that was cool.
I don't know if he's trying to equate Dürt Würk to Black Sabbath, but just the idea of...
I think it's just like carrying on the torch.
Carrying on the torch, yeah.
You know, being inspired and so wanting to make the thing that you enjoy consuming, but wanting to create it finally.
Yeah, and that just doing it for the sake of doing it. I mean, Kris just wanted to learn the music, and then she met Terry, and then they made a band, you know? And so it's like just playing music for the sake of playing music. Melanie has no aspirations of becoming a musician. She's just playing it because, I don't know, she thought Kris was cool.
I'm not going anywhere with my music. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and she's older. She wants to do what was like graphic design, I think. So it's not like on her radar, but it's just for the sake of enjoyment, for the sake of the art of it. I like that full circle aspect of it.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of the ending, as well as Kris it's insinuated that she's still out there playing music, and apparently she will occasionally show up at a club. Although this part's kind of weird too, because it's like there are rumors of her showing up and playing shows and then, you know, going back into the shadows or whatever. But when people there just record it and be like, hey, here's Kris playing music. But yeah. I don't know, that wouldn't have been as emotional and impactful of an ending.
And I think the point of it there is that she wasn't doing it for the corporatization of it.
She lives on almost
the joy of just making music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing I love about this book is just talking about how awesome metal is. And at one point, she's talking about one of the songs in Troglodyte. It's explaining how Troglodyte is like a person, and he's able to break through his chains and leave, kind of like leaving the Black Iron Mountain. That's like Dante's Inferno, right? Trying to get out, or he's going in.
Yeah, it's more like the Paradiso, I think it's called. In Purgatory, in the Divine Comedy, he's climbing a mountain.
It's also like that video game that you were playing. It's your Hades son.
Oh, wait, do you mean Hades?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's like climbing up out of hell.
Trying to get out of hell. So that's what Troglodyte is doing, but it's the Black Iron Mountain. And at one point, Hendrix says, Troglodyte shattered his chains and began his long trek to the surface because metal woke you up. Metal set you free. I love it because I feel that way. I love metal. It's so good. And I just love all the little tidbits of like, metal's awesome. Yay, metal. Because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, that's just growly, grumbly, angry music. And it's like, no, I actually listen to metal when I'm in a good mood. And if I'm in a bad mood, I listen to other kinds of music.
I remember once your parents were over and I had to move rocks in the backyard. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on some like heavy music. And it was cool. I was just like lifting rocks, listening to heavy music. And I thought I was just having a great time. And your mom or dad came out and I think they're like, are you okay? But like from their point of view, they're like, what's going on?
My mother never understood my appreciation of metal.
Which is probably something a lot of metalheads and punks could say.
Yeah. My dad, at least, he had a Black Sabbath album, like a record album, and listened to like Jethro Tull, and they listened to like the Stones and the Beatles, and kind of went into that like rock and roll towards the Police, that kind of more popular rock. And I didn't. I went the path they should have gone down, in my opinion, but I want dragons.
Should we wrap it up?
Oh, no, there's one quote that I definitely wanted to just bring up because I thought this was beautiful writing on Hendrix's part. So at the beginning, when Kris decides that she's going to try and stop Terry, she goes down into her mom's basement, digs through a bunch of old boxes, and finds her old guitar, pulls it out, and even though she swore she would never play music again.
It had been like 6 years, I think, at this point.
Her hand's all cramped. She doesn't have any calluses built up. She's like, oh my God, this sucks. But Hendrix says she had cut off her hands and buried them underground, and now here she was digging them back up. And I just love that because, I mean, obviously she didn't literally cut off her hands and bury them, but he's talking about her guitar, and I just thought I just think that's so...
Yeah, that was a really cool line.
Well put together.
I should say, too, I finished reading this book on a flight down to Los Angeles for work, and on the train ride after the flight, there was a girl in a leather jacket who, like...
A battle jacket?
Maybe? I don't know. But it was just cool because I had just finished reading it, and she was pretty skinny, like Kris has described. Didn't quite have the same wild-eyed look that I would imagine Kris had for much of this experience. But it was cool, like, just finishing the book and then seeing someone who could be the main character was kind of a weird thing.
In LA.
Yeah.
Going to the coffin show.
Ew.
We did that, but for Opeth. We flew down to LA just to go to an Opeth show. I mean, we had other reasons to be there, but...
When was that?
That was in 2020. That was our last concert.
Oh, that's right.
Before COVID hit.
Yep. That was the last time I had been down there too.
Yeah.
Totally worth it. Especially since everything shut down afterward. So I'm really glad we went.
Yeah, and didn't get COVID while we were there.
Yeah, really.
That was kind of nerve-wracking.
We landed and then read about the first case of COVID in LAX, which is funny because I remember feeling a little relieved that I was going south, because before that, I think the first cases we had read about, at least near us, were in Seattle. So I was like, oh, phew.
We're getting away from it. Meanwhile, stay out of crowded places as we go to a metal show.
we were still meeting friends at breweries. It was really early days before we started, I don't know, disinfecting our grocery bags or whatever.
Which actually works in a sense well with this last quote, I want to say. Heavy metal was their religion. It tore the happy face off the world. It told the truth. It knocked down doors.
I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. For the next episode, we're going to talk about Song for the Unraveling of the World by Brian Evenson, or Evenson, I'm not sure. I'll find out by the time we record that episode. This is one of my favorite short story authors of the last few years. He's also done some novels, which I have yet to read. Not that we plan on balancing books and short story collections. I think we'll mainly focus on novels. This was almost more of a convenient necessity because I was traveling and I happened to have this book on my Kindle and we have it at home. And I've really wanted her to read his stories because they're very eerie and weird and totally different than Hendrix. So a completely different vibe. But after that, I think we will mostly focus on books, would be my guess.
Well, and another good reason we're reading it is because we just went and saw him speaking with Stephen Graham Jones at the Portland Book Festival.
Yeah, that was fun.
Which piqued my interest.
Even if it's boring for them.
Even though I had one of his books on my bookshelf, he was not quite on my radar yet. I think you bought it and I just put it on my shelf because there was space.
Oh, a book. I'll take that.
Well, their covers don't scream horror. And they're short stories, which is not normally my go-to reading.
Yeah. He has really cool names for his collections. So this one's Song for the Unraveling of the World. There's also Collapse of Horses. And then I think my favorite title has got to be The Glassy Burning Floor of Hell, which is pretty metal.
Yeah, that one sounds more in line of what I would think. The other ones I think sound a little more sci-fi or weird fiction or just weird collections of stories, which is totally fine. There's, it doesn't have to say this is a horror book, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. Tune in for it. Thanks. Bye. Fuck off.
Go to hell.
Well, tune in or don't. I don't give a shit.
Wow, you're so punk.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.